Hi everyone, so today I am doing sort of a new-ish kind of video that I hope to do regularly on my channel, where I take a pattern that I have in my stash that I really want to make, but I don't necessarily want to dedicate the full financial resources into buying fabric and buying all the notions and buying everything I need to fully make the pattern. So I invested in a small bolt of muslin, and here is my first mock-up Monday, and it is Simplicity 85.91. So if you're interested in seeing how I made this dress, all the kind of trials and tribulations and very strange things about this pattern, then go ahead and keep on watching. Okay, so a couple of notes before I get into the actual pattern. So this isn't going to be like my normal tutorial style videos where I go step by step and make sure everything, I explain every single little detail of every single little steps. I do change a couple things around based on how I would normally do them. But if you are interested in me making this dress full out 100% properly, go ahead, leave me a comment below, give this video a like, let me know that that's something that you would want me to see, and maybe I can make that happen. Also, as you probably can tell, I am not adding a lining to this. I am also not interfacing anything, and that's just to save time and to save resources, because this is not a dress that I will wear regularly as it is, so I didn't want to put all of that extra lining and extra interfacing into something and just not get anything out of it. But the only thing that I really want to talk about before I even get into this is the pattern cutting process. It was very strange. I know sometimes people will look up a video and just see that there is one before they go make a pattern, and then they don't really pay attention. But the big thing that I do want to point out before all this starts is that the labeling on the front of the package, with dress A being the one with this band and dress B having some inset work on it, does not match up to the A and the B on the pattern envelope. I'll talk about it later, just double check everything, watch through. So don't buy your fabric yet, don't cut anything out yet, don't do anything yet until you watch at least the fabric cutting part of this video. Okay, so before I even start this pattern, I have a couple thoughts. One is that this is for petite sizes, and it's for ladies petite, but I went through a couple of my other Simplicity patterns that had patterns in similar size ranges, and I compared the actual measurements on the back, more specifically this, what is this, back neck to waist measurement, because that's here down, and you would think on a petite person that would be shorter than your standard, but they're exactly the same, and I haven't found any difference, so we'll see if there actually is one. And I know I am not a petite person. I am 5'8", and I have a very long torso, so hopefully this will fit. I decided that I will be making the B version of the dress, which is this one, which, hold on. You see, already there's a discrepancy, because on the front of the envelope, you can see that this version of the dress says A, and if you look closely, this is the one that has that contrasting band of crosswise perpendicular cut fabric on it, and it doesn't have these lace inserts right above the sleeve ruffle, and that's how it's listed here, and that B has the lace inserts and it's a little bit shorter, A has this band, C is still sleeveless regardless, but on the back it says that A is the one with the sleeve ruffle, or the lace on the sleeve, and that B is the one with the crosswise band. So I'm gonna have to dig in and see what I want to do, because I want to do this one with the solid sleeve and the crosswise band, because I kind of want to see how they do that, how they cut that, how they pattern that out. Let me just get into it. I'll pull some pattern pieces out and cut some things out. Alright, so looking at the instructions, it looks like this solid sleeve with the skirt detail is the A dress, while the lace insert sleeve with the regular skirt is the B dress. So what is listed on the front of the pattern is correct, but what's listed on the back is not. So if you are looking to make this pattern, if you buy this pattern and then you're in the store trying to pick up all of your fabric and all your notions and all of that, just know that if you wanted to make this dress, sorry, my thing's not focusing. If you wanted to make this dress with the fancy sleeves, you're going to have to buy everything for the B notions, which that one does have the sleeve trim in there. So that's your clue there to look closely. And if you want to make this dress with a fancy skirt, then you're going to need everything for the A dress. Okay, so before I even get to pinning and cutting, I was just kind of taking a quick look at here. And this is the little diagram of how it recommends that you lay out all of the pieces to cut. And here on this 44-inch, this belt piece right here, it's hard to tell, but it tries to get you to like lay it out, and because if you can't fit it all the way because of the fold or whatever, it tries to get you to like lay it against one of the points and then cut it out. And it has a special instructions where I think it's telling you to just cut it, and then once you cut it, like unfold it and then just kind of trim it down. But like, don't bother. Hold on. This is the belt piece, okay? It's perfectly symmetrical. I've already folded it in half. Like, it is perfectly symmetrical. There are no additional markings or anything. Just fold it in half and put that fold on the fold, and then you will have your one perfect thing. Like, I don't know why they're telling you to do all of that extra stuff. Just fold it. It's fine, really. Okay, so a couple things before I even get past the stage. One is, who is beeping? Thank you. So probably the most important thing is if you are cutting this out on a larger size, so a size 20, maybe even the 18, do not use 45-inch fabric or 44-inch fabric. This is a 44-inch muslin, and this has not been pre-treated or pre-washed in any way and all that good stuff that you're supposed to do if you're making clothes. And in order to make this fit like the diagram says that it should, this skirt band piece has to get up on the selvage of the fabric. So just, you know, hope that your selvage is smaller than your seam allowance that you need. So just keep that in mind, that if you are making this in a larger size, you may want to consider buying an extra yard of fabric or so that you know you have room to cut out all of these pieces, especially the sleeve piece right here. This is what I'm having trouble with. Also, the facing pieces, which are these smaller pieces right here, as well as the bodice front, are cut out in such, or they're patterned in such a way that some pieces are on one copy and then some sizes are on another copy. So this is for the larger sizes, sizes 20, 18, and 16, which I kind of see why they did that, so it wouldn't be, you know, obnoxiously huge. But usually when they do different sizes and have like a, what is it, 12, 13, 14, and then a 16, 18, 20 of this, it usually alternates. So you would have like a 12, a 16, and a 20, and then like a 14, and 18, and a 22 or something like that. And that's usually because the pieces would be so like squished together and there's such a small difference that it's kind of hard to see. So I'm not really sure why they did it this way. I mean, it's probably so you didn't wind up with one piece that was absolutely enormous. So I kind of see that, but that's something that you just need to be aware of when you are cutting out. Make sure that you are cutting out the pattern pieces that go with the size that you need. So the other elephant in the room that I hope you can see is this huge skirt band. So this is a lot. So the way that I think this wants you to cut out this piece is it wants you to have this all along the top, the non-folded edge rather, all along this non-folded edge, going all the way down, and the skirt front is also going to be cut on that folded edge a little bit further down. I just don't have the space to be able to lay out 4 yards of fabric in here, so I have to do this in pieces. But I think what this wants you to do is lay this out. Don't cut it yet. Just lay it out, and then once you get all the way to the end, fold the fabric back onto itself and then cut it, which is kind of insane because, you know, if you're working with a narrower piece of fabric, you need this down and you need this in place so that, you know, you don't cut into it. But then at the same time, if you're just gonna fold it, you gotta like fold it on top or you gotta fold it under itself. I don't know who came up with the idea of how to lay this out, but this is kind of insane. But at the same time, I would understand not wanting a seam right there, because if you put a seam in the front, then you're gonna have to worry about matching stripes, because at that point it would be horizontal, so you would have to make sure that you are cutting everything out exactly the same way, which is kind of just the beast that you choose to fight when you work with striped fabrics. There are points where you're going to have to perfectly match up stripes, but I honestly feel like that would be easier than trying to do all of this folding and try and get one super long piece, all of this nonsense. Also, if it bothered you, you could, you know, just put the seams at the sides. You know, you could kind of invert everything and move the marks along and just make sure the seams are at the sides, not directly in the front, and it'll be a lot less noticeable. Also, this skirt is literally just a rectangle skirt, so if you didn't want to fool with all the huge pattern pieces, you can just measure the width and the length of the rectangles. You can do some really simple algebra, you know, do the skirt front, multiply it by 2, add it to the skirt back, multiply that by 2, and then you'll get like the total width of the rectangle skirt that you need. And if you wanted to just not even bother with the pattern pieces and just cut out the rectangles to the length that you need, then by all means go ahead. The markings and the notches and the circles won't match up perfectly to like the center front, the center back, and the side seams, but if you're working on a pattern with this level of kind of skill needed, I'm sure you can figure out a rectangle skirt. I'm sure you can figure out how to mark the center front, the sides, and the center back, and then gather it down accordingly. Also, real quick, the only 2 changes that I am making in the cutting process is on the bodice front and back. I am lowering the waistline, or I'm lowering everything by 1 inch because that is a standard change that I have to make on all commercial patterns because my torso is so long. So that is the only change I'm making there. And also for this belt piece, I'm extending it by 3 inches because the size 20 I think recommends a like 34-inch waist, and right now I have about a 35 to a 36-inch waist, so I'm just extending that a little bit. But all right, let's get back to cutting. Okay, so I still have this piece number 9, which is the skirt band, and I have this pinned. This is still folded over. So I'm going to do what the instructions tell me to do, which is kind of wait until the end and then fold everything over because I want to see if that works out with everything, because, you know, that's part of why I'm making this video, making this mock-up, to see if everything in the instructions works out the way that it says it will. But if you do not want to do that, and if you're, you know, that's just a lot, and if you trust yourself in your ability to match up stripes and you just want to cut 2 separate pieces and sew them together, then you absolutely could do that at this point. You could cut these 2 pieces. Ideally, you would make sure that these are perfectly lined up with the stripes, because this was recommended for striped fabrics. I would recommend maybe giving yourself a little bit of extra room so that you can kind of fiddle with the stripes and match them up perfectly in the center. That would be if you're working with really narrow stripes like a pinstripe or kind of like a seersucker fabric. Go ahead and give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, and then when you sew them together, you can trim everything back down. And remember that if you are going to cut 2 pieces and sew them together at one end, give yourself an extra 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on this cut edge that would normally be the fold, so that you're making sure that when you sew that down, you are still at the full length of fabric that you would supposed to have if you cut that on a fold. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this for a second while I'm thinking about it. So this calls for a 3-inch hem, or it says 3-inch hem allowed, so I'm going to go ahead and do that so that you can see what the length looks like on me at its recommended hem. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this while everything is flat before I gather it down. So for the skirt, I assume the construction of the skirt is going to be sew up, or some conglomeration of sew up the side seams, gather it down, hem. But in my experience, because this seems to be this is going to be a lot of fabric in this rectangle skirt, and that's going to be a lot of fabric getting gathered down and cinched down to a comparatively small waist measurement. And in my experience with rectangle skirts, and I have made a decent amount of them, is that when you gather that much fabric down, it will poof out, and it will poof out kind of evenly all the way around, regardless of what's underneath. So you won't really have to worry about the front maybe being a little bit longer than the back. And even if you did, because there's going to be so much fabric in the skirt, it's going to be nominal. There's really not going to be a whole lot of difference. And again, in my experience sewing rectangle skirts, it's a lot easier to do the hem before it's gathered down when everything is just one big even tube. So I'm going to do a rolled hem, so I'm going to fold it over a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold it over 2.5 inches to get a nice 3-inch hem, or 3 inches taken off the bottom. So I just wanted to hurry up and pop on and say that because I might not do any sewing tonight, haven't decided yet. Depends on how I feel. But yeah, I wanted to get that out before I forget about it. Alright, so let me try to talk you through what my brain is doing to kind of measure out how much of everything I need. So in order to cut out the skirt back and side back, which is piece 8 and piece 6, it wants you to open up this fabric, and then instead of folding it like this, it wants you to fold it kind of back on itself like this. It doesn't want to be folded hot dog style, it wants to get folded hamburger style. So in order to do a little bit of mental math and thinking exercises to try to see where I would need to fold this to be able to cut all of this out. Long story short, for what I am doing with the size 20 and having to add on a little bit of extra length in the bodice, 4 5/8 yards, which is what it tells you on the package what you'll need, it's not enough. Like, it's just objectively not enough. Because if I wanted to cut on this fold that I made, and if I wanted to fold this over, I would need a little bit more. So here is the 4 5/8 mark. Here is where this is. So if I were to cut this or get just 4 5/8, my kitten, it would not be enough fabric. So go ahead and round up to the 5 yards. You want to come say hi? You want to come get in the way? Hello? Are you helping? Are you going to be my helper? You're going to be my pattern weight? Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to get that cut off camera because it's going to be a lot, and then I think I'm going to stop for the night because I'm tired and this has been a journey. You just want to get in the middle of everything? Okay, you do that. Okay. I lied. 4 5/8 wound up being just about perfect, but it was tight. Like, it was real tight. Regardless, I would recommend going up to getting 5 yards of whatever fabric you need. Alright, so I am on day 2. I have some matcha green tea with a little bit of caffeine in it to help wake my brain up. So last night before I quit, I did go ahead and, using a highlighter, because why not, I marked all of my darts, I marked all of the circles, any markings that were on the pattern that I needed to pay attention to. I did go ahead and mark those. I also marked the placement line of the skirt, and I peeked ahead in the instructions and I realized that that band on the skirt is appliqued on. Kind of, I don't know if that's technically the correct term, but that's what it is. It's appliqued on top of the skirt. It's not like cut and then inserted in, which also, if you're making the version with a lace inset on the sleeve, it probably wouldn't be particularly difficult if you wanted to cut your skirt along that placement line and then also add in that lace inset to that. And so you'd have that extra little detail. You just have to buy a lot, probably an extra 3 or 4 yards. I'll measure it if I remember, of that lace that you're using, that insertion lace, and you'd also have to be okay with having a little bit of a gap in your skirt. Unless you wanted to back it with something, then you totally could, or if you wanted to just add that little bit of lace on, again, you totally could. So yeah, I'm predicting that the rest of the sewing will be pretty uneventful, knock on wood, because those are some very famous last words. Point is, I'm not anticipating any like major problems. I don't think there's going to be anything too crazy with the construction of it, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Which also, while I'm thinking about it real quick, the fact that the band is appliqued onto the skirt, the instructions say to only fold over each side by 1/4 inch. So if you had to kind of push that band up onto the selvage edge to cut it off, or to cut it to get the whole thing on, you may be seeing a little bit of the selvage, or you may wind up with a narrower band than you were anticipating. So just keep that in mind, and again, don't try to cut this out of 44 inch or 45 inch fabric, especially if you're cutting it out of the larger sizes. It's just not gonna work. Alright, so steps 1 and 2 are very straightforward, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on there. It was basically, yeah, sew up all the darts, pin them, or press them, and then go ahead and attach the front piece to the back pieces at the shoulder and at the side seams, but the zipper is going to go in the back, so don't sew up the back seam. It looks like it might be a little large, but we'll see. We'll figure it out when we get there. So now we're going to do the sleeves. Again, very straightforward. All right, so the first thing we're going to do on the sleeves is sew two lines of parallel stitching all the way across. These are going to be gathering stitches, so you're going to use a very long stitch length, and go ahead and leave the tails on. So that you can pull them later. We're not going to do that right now. That's going to be later when we set the sleeves into the bodice, but that's just setting it up. And if you see me using various colors of thread, it is just me trying to use up all of my collection of misfit bobbins so that I can rewind them with different colors. So that was the first part of working with the sleeves. So now that that's done, we are going to sew up the sleeves together. And then we are also going to take piece number, what is this, 6? Yes, 6, the sleeve ruffle, and we are also going to take these pieces and turn them into tubes. Now I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment with these, so I will show you what I'm doing once all of this is sewn up and pressed open nicely at my iron. Alright, so here I am at my iron, and I'm going to run a little bit of an experiment because why not? You know, why not? Okay, so the instructions on this sleeve ruffle, which is piece number 6, have you do a nice proper rolled hem, which is honestly what I would have done anyway. But for the purposes of experimentation, because I am, after all, a scientist, I have a very expensive degree to prove it, I figured what would happen if I only folded this over once and I didn't do the proper finished rolled hem, and instead of doing 1/4 inch and then 1/4 inch, I just did the 1/2 inch. So I'm anticipating that this one that's only been folded over once is going to be kind of floppy and have a much like looser and like almost heavier looking ruffle. It's going to be a little bit more floppy, and that this one that got rolled over twice is going to have a little bit more of a structured hem. So this one is going to be more kind of poofy and sticky outy. And anyway, hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. So you know what? Let's run a little bit of some experimentation and see how that affects the final garment and see what it looks like. So anyway, now that this is nice and pressed, I'm going to go ahead and sew down this hem, and I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to sew very large gathering stitches, 2 lines of them, all along the top of here. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is attach the ruffle to the sleeve. Now, when you're sewing this gathering stitch, I would highly recommend starting and stopping it on this seam because that will make it a little bit easier to kind of pull both sides evenly and make sure you're getting even gathers on both sides. I started it somewhere off to the side on this one just because I wasn't thinking about it, and I did have to fight with it a little bit. I don't think I will have to fight with it as much on this one, but we are going to pin this matching up right sides together, of course, and match up the seam and then match up this little notch and then gather everything down. And it should look something like this when you sew it. Now, the instructions want you to bind this once it's done. Hi, kitten. The instructions want you to bind this once it's done. I'm not going to do that because this is a mock-up. This is not meant for actual wear. So there will be very little friction going on there. It's literally just for me to try on the garment. So I will not be doing that. So I'm going to get the ruffle sewn onto the sleeves real quick, and then I think the next step is to, put the sleeves in the arm size. All right, so now we are going to do these sleeves into the bodice. Now pay attention to these dots that we put up here and here and here, and they correspond with dots that we made on the bodice pieces here and here because you're going to match those up before you start gathering, because this little section is going to get gathered a little bit more densely than this section right here. So just match up all of your notches and all of your dots and then pull everything down and gather and pin accordingly. And when that's done, it'll look something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach the sleeves, and that should be the majority of the bodice functionally done. Okay, so here's where we're at right now. It does kind of tend to want to pull up a little bit on me and gather up here, but I think once I get the skirt on, and the skirt will help weigh it down and keep it where it's supposed to be, I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. So here's kind of what it looks like. The back is a little... I can't really pin behind me too well on myself, so the back isn't great. It fits Admittedly, it's a little tight in this area right above the bust, but then again, I am a double D. Honestly, I'm probably a triple D right now. So I am rather well endowed in the boobage area. Let's see, the sleeves. I'm anticipating having a little trouble reaching forward once I get the zipper in. I think that's gonna kind of pull a little bit. I'm not sure because I can't see directly behind me to see what this back seam is looking like right now. Let's see. Oh yeah, for sleeves, so for your reference, this is the sleeve that I only folded over once, and this is kind of a softer, like not quite as dramatic poof, and this is the one that had the double-edged or the rolled hem, and this one definitely sticks out a lot more. So do with that information what you will. So on me, also, this shoulder is really wide, and this seam kind of seems to be sitting kind of low. This, what is this? Sleeve seam, words. It does seem to be sitting pretty low. We'll see if that kind of fixes itself once I put the zipper or whatever closure I wind up using on. But yeah, we'll just, we'll see. We'll see. We're only about halfway there, so let's get a move on. The next step is to go ahead and do the skirt. So I am going to get, what do the instructions say? Skirt back and side front to skirt front at side front seams. So I'm going to basically sew up the skirt, but I'm not going to put the back seam together yet. And then I am going to do the band. I'll show you how I do the band. I'm just going to get the skirt kind of pieced together real quick. 99.5 inches. This skirt is 99.5 inches long. Okay, wow, this is really, really yellow. My white balance is very off. Okay, so it's kind of difficult to see, but my placement lines are a little off from each other, so I'd recommend waiting until this point to go ahead and mark your placement lines. So I'm just going to kind of like hope for the best. So here's the center front of my skirt. No, it's over here. Yeah. Here's the center front of my skirt, so I'm going to match the center point of the top edge of the band and pin it on there. Then I'm going to match the dots to the seams, and then I'm just going to try to pin it and hope for the best. And I think my plan of attack here is to just use as many pins as I can possibly cram on there. All right, so here I have the band pinned on, so now I'm going to go ahead and just
cover these X's here.
Sorry, he's playing Minecraft. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and sew very close to the edge of both of these all the way down. Okay, so here is what I have of the skirt thus far. It went on pretty well. There's a little bit of puckering, but I don't think it's going to be super noticeable once it's all gathered and ruffled. So I also took this opportunity to go ahead and put in my big basting gathering stitches up at the top on this top edge, just making sure that I didn't go past these notches, so that when I do the next step, which is to find the other end of this incredibly long skirt, there we go, somewhere over there, and sew up this back seam, and we're going to stop at this notch kind of close to the top because that's the zipper goes up there. So now I'm going to sew that proper 3. You see, this doesn't match up properly. It's hard to tell, maybe you can tell in the light, but these two don't match up properly, so this will be interesting, and I almost feel like for matching that up, it would have been better to wait and make a tube and then attach the tube to this when it's a tube kind of thing. I don't know, I haven't eaten in a while, so my brain needs food, brain not working right. But anyway, so once I do that, I peeked ahead in the instructions, and one of the last things that the instructions tells you to do is the hem, but like I talked a little bit about earlier, I'm going to go ahead and do the hem of this skirt at this point. So I'm going to sew this up, press it open, then I'm going to do the hem before I gather, because again, just in my experience with rectangle skirts like this, you don't have to worry too much about the hem being uneven in the front and the back as long as you sew everything on kind of even at the top and at the waistband. You really don't have to worry about it, and it's a lot easier to do when it is a flat tube and not when it's a scrunched up tube. So I'm going to get that pressed and sewn real quick. And another pro tip, definitely wind yourself a full bobbin at this point in time, or before you do all of this sewing, because you have approximately 500 feet of sewing just in this skirt, because it's about 500 inches of sewing in this skirt, because you got to go around the band twice, then you got to go around the upper part twice, and then you got to go around the hem once, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Alright, so I'm taking a little break. I got the hem done. I'm eating myself some hummus and some pretzels, getting some brain food going. And I think the only thing left is to gather down the skirt, attach it to the waist, replace the batteries in my camera, attach the skirt to the waist of the bodice, insert the zipper, and do the collar facing, or the neck facing, and then we're done. Alright, so I'm working on attaching everything. So the center front and the center front gets matched up, this back and the back get matched up at the notches, and then for the sides, this little dot on the skirt gets matched up to the side seam of the bodice, and then the side seam of the skirt gets matched up, I forgot to match it there, but the side seam of the skirt gets matched up to the big dot on the bodice. At least that's what it looks like from the diagram, so this is what I'm going with. So now I'm going to gather all of this down and hopefully not accidentally rip out my stitching. Alright, so here's where we're at. Everything is attached. I went ahead and put the zipper in. Now, the instructions do have you do a lapped zipper, but I will not be doing that because I know 100% I will be pretty soon ripping this zipper out and using it for another mock-up kind of thing, so I don't want to put it too in there when I know I'm just going to have to take it out. So I just basted it in like you would any invisible zipper. So here it is in, here's what we're working with, and the only thing left to do is this neck facing. Alright, so next we have the facings, which is going to be super straightforward, so it's basically just match up your notches. So 5/8 seam allowance, press that open. Then once that's pressed open, we're going to, it'll be on this side, we're going to roll that up really quickly. I think the instructions only have you do it once, I believe. I'll double check that, but we're going to roll it up to make a nice finished edge, and then it is going to get attached to the neckline, matching the center points. I think there's a mark for the seam, and then there's a notch in the back. Alright, so here is the facing sewn on. I have that here. So now what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to clip this first, and then the instructions want you to understitch the seam allowance to the facing, so that when you turn it in and tack it down at certain points, I think they ask you to tack it down. Not sure, I haven't read that far ahead, but hypothetically speaking, if you were to turn this in and tack it down, it would make sure that everything stays nice and on the inside, and that you won't have to worry about seeing the seam on the outside. So I'm going to do that really quickly, and then, you know what? I think we're done at that point. Whoops, I forgot about the belt piece. Oh look, it already is conveniently folded perfectly in half, just the way that we cut it, which makes sense. Instead of doing that, I'm not going to get into it again. I'm just going to sew on this corner. Yeah, we're going to sew this thing, the what is that, point, and then all the way down, and then leave this open for turning. So here it is, nice and sewn. I don't know if you can see it, but I also clipped the corner. There's the point there and then the corner there. So I clipped that, and now I'm going to use a reusable metal straw, do a little finagling, and I'm just going to turn this loop and then give it a good press. You see, the thing is, I'm looking into the camera instead of at what I'm doing to make sure that I'm doing this in frame. And now, there you go, belt. Let me go press this. So here this is, all nice and pressed. Now if you wanted to, you could do a quick row of top stitching all along the edges just to keep them nice and crisp over time. I'm not going to bother. So now the next thing is to do the buckle. Now I just made a belt and a buckle, or I just made a fabric belt to go with a dress. So anyway, came in a 2-pack, so I have a second one of these. It doesn't quite fit, but I'm not gonna worry about it too much because again, this is just a mock-up. And I'm sure there is a much better way and a neater and prettier way to finish this off, but I'm going to do this the lazy way just to get it on and to see what it would look like. And I'm just going to pull this through real quick and sew across here to make it secure. And then this will pass through there and then back, and it's a little small, but you know, it's what I'm working with, and it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So here's the finished dress. I went ahead and put a petticoat on. So part of the reason I really wanted to make this particular dress was because Simplicity put it on a whole bunch of merch, and I bought this cute little tea towel that says "I'm not needy, I want tea." And I identify with that a lot. But anyway, if you look at the artist sketch of this gown, of this dress, it looks like it's supposed to be worn with a petticoat or crinoline, and from the year that this was made, which was probably late 50s, early 60s, I'm leaning towards probably early 60s, this would have traditionally been worn, it wasn't that long ago, but it would have been worn with some type of crinoline or petticoats, and that extra fullness in the skirt really adds to the shape and it adds to the silhouette. Anyway, here's what it looks like. So here is the finished dress as it is. So this is in a size 20. So there's a little bit of, if I remember correctly, there's a little bit of some weird stuff going on here. I don't quite know how to fix that. It seems like the back it was either cut to be much longer than the front, because when I added on that extra inch, it didn't, it was even all the way around. I like measured and took the time to make sure it was super even. So I'm not really sure why the back wants to sit so much lower than the front does. Not quite sure. Anyway, yeah, so here it is. It's pretty fun. I like it. Let me get the belt on. So mine's going to be really floppy because I did not put any sort of interfacing anywhere in this garment, including the belt, just because I didn't want to waste my interfacing on a mock-up. But even though the dress will fit a little bit of a larger size, so right now my waist measurement is somewhere around like a 35, 36. I cut it out on a size 20, which calls for a 34, I believe, inch waist. But the belt was definitely made to go exactly on, actually it was made to go down to like a 32-inch waist. So definitely add a couple inches onto the belt if you want to do the belt. I don't know if this makes it look better or worse because the belt just does not fit. Anyway, I really like the shape, so why don't I sit down and talk about, you know, pros, cons, all kinds of final thoughts. Alright, so that was Simplicity 8591. Now, with absolutely how stinking cute this dress is on the envelope, and with how much merch Simplicity has put this pattern back on, I was really surprised to find that, at least on YouTube, there weren't any like dedicated tutorials or dedicated sew-throughs to this pattern. And I was really shocked and really confused as to why that was until I actually looked closer at the pattern, and then I looked at how to cut things out, and then I realized, oh, that's why no one's done this before, because this is a royal pain. So probably the biggest takeaway here is there are instructions on the back for if you wanted to cut this out of 45-inch wide fabric and 60-inch wide fabric, but if you are cutting this out of a 45-inch wide fabric, don't even bother if you are a size probably 18 or 20, maybe even a 16. It's just not going to fit. And especially if you're using a fabric that once you wash it and you pre-treat it, it might shrink a little bit, so that's pretty much all of your cottons. You're not going to fit all of the pieces on. You're going to need an extra yard or so just to be able to cut out the sleeves. The sleeve was the one that was hard to cut out. You can probably squeeze all the bodices in if it shrinks a little bit, but it was a pain. And also cutting out this band was a giant pain as well, because it is one incredibly long piece and you have to fold a whole bunch of things. The actual construction of the gown, keep calling it a gown. It's not really a gown. The actual construction of the dress wasn't particularly difficult. There wasn't really anything in it that is unreasonably hard. It was just the cutting, and it's laying out the fabric so that you can cut everything the way that you need to. And especially with this A dress, because this dress with the band was designed to be cut out of striped fabric. That's why the band is where it is, because the way that you pay attention to the grain line and the way that you're paying attention to how you're cutting out all of the pattern pieces, all of the stripes are going to go in one direction except for the band. They're going to go in a different direction. So just pay attention to your grain line, try to think a couple of steps ahead when you're cutting out, and if you can avoid cutting this out or using 45-inch wide fabric, do that. Go ahead, try to find a 60-inch wide fabric or try to find something wider, because this was kind of a pain. Also, another weird thing that I wanted to point out was this is supposed to be for petite sizes. Like, this is supposed to be a separate pattern for petite sizing, and there's even a couple of notes in here about, oh, so for petite ladies and for the petite sizes, you're going to have to cut your zipper, or you're going to have to make some changes to the zipper to make it fit. I don't see how this is petite. Like I said, I am not a petite person. I am 5'8". I am tall. And I also have a very long torso, which is, you know, the structured part of this bodice. So the only change that I made, as I talked about a little bit earlier, was I added 1 inch to the length of the torso, because that is a change that I always have to make on every standard pattern. But as it is, a size 20 in petite fits me perfectly, almost perfectly, with that one change. So I'm not entirely sure what makes this particular pattern petite. Maybe it is smaller and maybe it is shorter in the smaller sizes. This is the larger pattern grade. So I don't quite know what's going on there, but if you can only find the petite, which is all I could find when I was shopping and I found this pattern, you should be fine. But anyway, this dress turned out super cute. I love the cut of it. I think that this is very, very cute. I'm really tempted to make it again. If I do make this again, I might consider making this B version that has the lace insets on the sleeves and not even bother about the stripes, because if I had to cut this out of actual stripe material, I will probably throw myself off a cliff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I know this was a little bit different than what I'm doing, but I really enjoyed doing this kind of a project, and I hope to continue. So if you like, go ahead, leave me a comment, subscribe, thumbs up, all that fun YouTube stuff. If you want to see fun behind the scenes stuff, go ahead and give me a follow over on Instagram, over at Thread and Needlefish. That's where I put all kinds of stuff that doesn't make it to YouTube. I put behind the scenes, I put polls, I put sneak peeks, all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, if you want to give me a follow on Instagram as well, I'd appreciate that. And yeah, that's all I got. See you in the next one. Oh boy, my tripod, a thing to rub your face on. What are you doing? That's all you wanted? You wanted to come make my shots unsteady and then leave? Is that what you wanted? Cats, what are you gonna do?